Forget the breadlines. You don't know the strangest part. In the Great Depression, Washington paid to destroy food, veterans were driven out of D.C., and crowds bought tickets to watch people walk in circles for weeks just to eat. Welcome to the moment when policy and desperation collided, and common sense disappeared. The government paid to destroy food, while people went hungry. In 1933, the Agricultural Adjustment Act paid farmers not to produce in order to lift collapsing prices and farm incomes. The lightning rod was the corn hog program. Washington purchased and slaughtered about 6.4 million piglets and brood sows for roughly $31 million, while ordering about 10 million acres of cotton plowed under. The macro logic was textbook: reduce supply to break the deflationary spiral, but the optics were brutal. Newsreels showed food destroyed while soup kitchen lines curled around city blocks. In October 1933, the government created a surplus relief corporation to buy excess commodities and channel them to the poor. Yet the reputational scar remained. Instead of feeding people, the state seemed to fix prices by manufacturing scarcity. Policymakers insisted the shock was necessary to rescue farm communities and Main Street alike. Millions of viewers saw something simpler: waste in a hungry nation. Faced with collapsing prices and empty plates, would you choose hard-nosed market repair or immediate food on the table? The bonus army was driven out by cavalry, tear gas, and fire. By mid-1932, roughly 17,000 World War I veterans, plus families, had set up camps across Washington, D.C., demanding early payment of a promised bonus. On July 28, President Herbert Hoover authorized the Army to clear the city. General Douglas MacArthur, with George Patton leading mounted troops and Dwight Eisenhower on staff, forced marchers back across the bridges, used tear gas, and burned the shacks at Anacostia Flats. Fatalities were limited, but the images were devastating: soldiers confronting men who had been soldiers. The White House argued public order required force. Voters saw moral failure during the nation's darkest hour. The episode helped crater Hoover's standing and became a cautionary tale about appearing heartless in a depression. If law and order means bayonets for veterans, what does a government owe those who once risked their lives for it? Dance marathons, walking in circles for weeks to eat. Depression-era walkathons blended endurance and vaudeville. Couples had to keep moving 45 minutes of every hour around the clock, while audiences paid 25 cents to watch scripted sprints, staged weddings, and dramatic collapses. Contestants got bunks and regular meals, a lifeline when jobs vanished, while promoters hired MCs, floor judges, nurses, and professional couples, employing an estimated 20,000 people nationwide. After a 19-day Seattle marathon ended in a suicide attempt, the city banned the contests on September 5, 1928. By March 13, 1937, Washington state outlawed them entirely. The shows were exploitative and often rigged. The grind caused injuries, delirium, and public scandal. Yet for some, marathons meant 12 meals a day and a roof during the worst years. Was it a cruel spectacle feeding on desperation, or a grim transactional safety net when nothing else stood between people and hunger? Send a dime, chain letters, flooded the mails. In the spring of 1935, Prosperity Club, send a dime. Chain letters erupted from Denver and swept the nation. The pitch felt harmless: mail 10 cents to the top name on a list, add yours to the bottom, and send out 5 copies. Soon, a rain of dimes would pour back. Post offices were swamped. Clerks griped that coin-stuffed envelopes jammed canceling machines. Local papers tallied the incoming mailbags like election returns. Postal inspectors and prosecutors called it an illegal lottery, and basic math exposed the flaw: geometric progressions don't stop politely. As arrests and warnings mounted, the fervor fizzled, leaving thousands poorer by 10 cents and richer in hard lessons. The craze distilled Depression-era psychology: minuscule buy-in, viral hope, and the irresistible promise of beating the odds when ordinary odds felt hopeless. An anti-monopoly game became America's love letter to monopolists. Lizzie Magie patented the landlord's game in 1903 to 1904 to teach Henry George's critique of land rent and concentrated wealth. Her design featured two rule sets: one anti-monopolist, low rents, shared prosperity, and one monopolist, that winner take all. In 1935, Parker Brothers bought Magie's patent for $500, published Monopoly based on Charles Darrow's iteration, and the country fell in love with bankrupting friends. The Atlantic City map even preserved a long-lived typo, Marvin Gardens, for Marvin Gardens, as the game steamrolled Magie's social lesson. The 1940 census listed Magie's occupation as maker of games, income zero, while Monopoly sold in the millions. The Great Depression turned a classroom warning into a national pastime about crushing competitors, proof that the market can invert a moral in one product cycle. A single storm moved 350 million tons of dust. On May 11, 1934, drought-scorched, overplowed fields met high winds and birthed a giant. An estimated 350 million tons of topsoil lofted into the sky and carried nearly 2,000 miles to the Atlantic. Midday dimmed toward twilight across Chicago, Washington, D.C., and New York City. Ships far offshore reported a fine brown film on deck. Newspapers translated the load as 3 tons of dirt per American. The catastrophe jolted policymakers toward the Soil Conservation Service, shelter belts, terracing, and crop rotation incentives, belated guardrails after years of taking more from the plains than they could sustain. A year later, Black Sunday, April 14, 1935, turned afternoon into night across the southern plains. The phrase Dust Bowl entered the nation's memory and never left. Wooden money. Almost no one redeemed. When banks froze up, Tenino, Washington, printed emergency wooden scrip, thin cedar notes in 25-cent, 50-cent, and $1 denominations to keep local trade alive. Between 1932 and 1933, the town issued roughly $10,000 in scrip. When normal currency returned, residents redeemed only about $40. The rest they kept as souvenirs. In practice, Tenino received an interest-free loan from its own citizens, and the quirky notes became Depression-era collectibles. The original press now sits in the Depot Museum. From time to time, the town revives scrip as a cultural project and civic calling card. Absurd, or a masterclass in behavioral economics, where scarcity, story, and hometown pride can make funny money stick better than the real thing. Penny auctions that beat the bank. Across Iowa, Nebraska, and the upper Midwest, neighbors fought foreclosures with penny auctions. Hundreds circled auction yards, stared down outsiders, and let a friend buy back his tractor, livestock, or even homestead for cents on the dollar. Sheriffs often looked the other way to avoid violence. Banks sometimes accepted token bids to end standoffs. In Madison County, Nebraska, locals even branded their tactics the Madison County Plan. Legally, it was intimidation. Socially, it was mutual defense against a price collapse that had turned collateral into rubble. Penny auctions couldn't repair a broken system, but they bought families time, often the only thing standing between them and the road. Gold in, price up. EO 6102 and the revaluation. On April 5, 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6102, restricting private hoarding of gold coins, bullion, and certificates. Citizens had to turn in excess holdings at $20.67 per troy ounce, with limited exemptions for collectors, industry, and small jewelry. On January 30, 1934, the Gold Reserve Act centralized monetary gold in the Treasury and reset the official price to $35, a roughly 41% devaluation of the dollar relative to gold. Overnight, the government's balance sheet swelled as revalued metal boosted reserves. Exporters cheered a cheaper dollar, savers fumed at a one-way bet they weren't allowed to make. Was it cynical state arbitrage, or the necessary shock to break deflation, lift prices, and get the economy breathing again? In the short run, it worked. The fairness debate never really ended.